Hello, you're stuck in Trial with Wolf. Go like a few minutes riffing on IT and IT security. Today, looking at securing the Jenkins pipeline. In DevOps, there's this concept of continuous integration, continuous development, CI/CD. In DevOps, there's this concept of highly automating things. In DevOps, there's this concept of infrastructure as code and application as code, the ability to specify parameters, click a button, and spin up servers, services, push things out, the whole 9 yards. That is your pipeline, right? That's your build and deployment pipeline. And it can be a fantastic way to wrap security controls, because now we can automate the checking of things. We can automate the spinning up an application of access controllers. We can do all this sort of things. However, the tip for you is this: the greater the importance of the pipeline, the more important it is to secure that pipeline, right? Think of it for just a minute. If I'm a bad guy and I get access to a tool, a platform that I can spin up and spin down services, that I can set or remove ACLs, that I can push out software, that I can, start whole clouds. How great is that for persistence, right? Oh, I just spin up my own, attack cloud right there. How great is that for attacks? Oh, I just push out these lower ACLs or create user accounts and everything. Kind of a scary thing. There's 1,000,001 ways to attack a pipeline, but the one I'm most interested in at the moment for this video is code itself. As we know, people make pretty consistent levels of errors. You write 1,000 lines of code, you probably got a couple errors in there. You got half dozen errors, probably a couple of those errors are security vulns. Got a few security vulns, probably a couple of those allow for remote execution. The more the code, lines of code, the more chances there are that there's going to be an executable vulnerability in that. And we create bad code pretty consistently. We're very good as humans at creating bad code. So how would you look at the code across your pipeline? One way to look at it is the pipeline itself, of course, like Jenkins as a tool. The other way to look at it is the plugins. So when you deploy a pipeline, you're going to have a bunch of plugins to communicate to various different platforms, different systems. These plugins are oftentimes open source, and these open source plugins are oftentimes created as people need them, and sometimes these packages are abandoned. And as I've mentioned many times, the whole idea of open source means many eyeballs, means security, doesn't quite work in the real world when one guy's creating something and then leaving it alone for months, years, decades at a time. As Jenkins has matured, these plugins have exploded, and that means at the same time the amount of untended and unwatched, unmonitored plugins has consequently grown. And of course, again, consistent level of vulnerabilities across all these things. Maybe not consistent. Someone's going to argue with me about skill level and everything. Go ahead, let me have it on Twitter. Consistent level of vulnerabilities. Let me have it. A recent study found hundreds of such vulnerable plugins were available for Jenkins pipelines. So when you are looking at your DevOps environment, when you're considering how to secure it, make sure you're taking into account the plugins that people are snapping into Jenkins, because those plugins can allow access to the pipeline. And as I mentioned earlier, the pipeline can allow access to everything. What do you think, and how would you go about protecting plugins in a DevOps environment? Comment, social media, hit me up.